October 20th, Councilman resigned, Councilmember Corretz, awaiting the arrival of Councilmember Bernard Parks. And we have 4 items on the agenda. We have another committee at 3 o'clock, so we will finish one way or another at 5 minutes to 3 so we can attend the other meeting in council chambers. Please bring number 1 up, please.
For item number 1, the mayor has submitted a memo. This is regarding a request from the Los Angeles World Airports for 3 re-exemptions of assistant airport police chief and for 1 executive assistant airport position. The deadline for council to act on this will be November 2nd.
Okay.
Hi, good afternoon. Paula Adams, Los Angeles World Airport staff. And the airports respectfully request your approval for 4 exemptions today. 3 of them are assistant airport police chiefs that were recently vacated. We're just simply asking to be able to backfill those. We originally got those 3 positions exempted in 2007. The salary for those positions is $126,000 to $156,000 and is fully funded with airport funds. The 4th exemption is for an executive assistant airports. That is a new position. During the City Council's consideration of the fiscal year 11 budget, Councilman Rosendahl asked our executives to deliver a fully entitled community plan for the LAX North Side 340 acres by the summer of 2013. So the person who fills this position will lead the strategic planning and development for the North Side properties. That is also a position that is fully supported with airport funds, and the salary is $128,000 to $160,000.
And these are exempt positions, which means that they're selected at the discretion of the general manager or the chief of police?
The general manager, she does consult with the chief of airport police, the airport police chief for the assistant airport police chief vacancies, but on that 4th position, he would not be included in that discussion.
That would be by the general manager of the airport?
That's right.
Which excludes anyone in a competitive process through a civil service system.
Right. There is not a civil service process for that.
I have a problem with excluding positions that are established with civil service, assistant airport police chief, Homeland Security, assistant airport police chief, patrol and traffic, assistant airport police chief administration, at $126,000 to $156,000.
Well, maybe I misunderstood you, Councilman Zine, because the airport did advertise all of the positions. We received applications from members of the public and our internal candidates.
That was my question.
Okay, so we went through an interview panel where we brought in outside people to sit on the panel from the Harbor Department, the community, and inside LAWA.
So you did an outreach for interested?
For all 4 positions.
Not just pick somebody out of the...
No.
Because they know somebody?
No, I'm sorry, I misunderstood your question.
Okay. Well, that's what I was trying to make sure.
Okay.
So I'm glad that it was done in a proper fashion. Who's handling those positions now? Homeland Security, Airport, Patrol, Traffic Administration. Who's handling those positions?
When you say handling, you mean?
Well, are they? You say they're vacant now.
Actually, we went through a process to fill them on an emergency basis.
Okay.
And we have emergency appointees filling those roles at this time.
Okay. Okay. So they're not being neglected, obviously.
No, sir.
And then the other position, I'm not really sure. The North Heart, is that the North Runway they're talking about?
That's adjacent to Westchester Parkway on the north side. Mm-hmm. Those 340 acres there that are not developed at this time.
So it's more than a runway?
It's more than a runway. It is contemplated that will be the area where we might have a ground transportation center, an automated people mover, moving the people from that center to the central terminal area.
So there's a whole lot of stuff.
Right.
Okay. Paul?
Are any of the people in those emergency positions being considered for the permanent position?
They all will have the ability to compete for the permanent position, yes.
But presumably with no advantage given for holding that position?
No, no, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else?
That's it.
Okay, so we'll have a recommendation to approve the exemptions, and by the number of 150, what's this going to take us to? Anybody know?
With these, that would be at 96.
96, so we're well in the number. And again, they're for the airport law enforcement operations. Those are exemptions that were already granted, so this is a re-exemption. And the only new one is for that major project that's going to take place on the north end.
That's correct.
Okay. So second?
Sure.
All right, you got approval. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Number 2, please.
The Community Development Department is requesting a civil service exemption for one project coordinator. This is for their domestic violence program.
Okay. Tell us what you got.
Good afternoon. My name is Nancy Navarro. I'm the Acting Personnel Director for the Community Development Department. And we're seeking a civil service exemption for the position of project coordinator. And this is a position that works with our domestic violence program. It is a grant-funded position, completely grant-funded with CDBG funds. And we're able to provide you with additional information about exactly, what the position does in terms of the nature of the work.
What happens when the grant runs out?
We would then terminate the position.
And the person is notified of that when they're hired on?
That's correct.
Mr. Parks, we completed number 1 or number 2. And we just opened discussion on number 2. Any questions from you, Paul?
No.
We'll let you catch up with them. Okay.
I just had one question.
Okay, go ahead.
On 2, I just wonder, on these duties, that's the domestic violence program, is that a function that was recently transferred because of the movement of commissions and things of that nature? Or is that something that's been in CDD for a while?
It's been at CDD, I would say, since at least 2006, 2005.
That's all I was wondering.
You happy with that? Oh,
I'd move the item.
okay, thank you. You have approval
Thank
on
you.
that. Number 3, please.
The Personnel Department has submitted their quarterly report on consolidated reasonable accommodations for employees with temporary and permanent work restrictions as a result of industrial or non-industrial injuries or illnesses.
And
Hello, Raylan Napper, Personnel Department.
Let me just say, before you get started, on attachment 1, I don't know whether council file left half of the chart off or whether, because all I got on is half a page on each, on page 1 and 2, and from the narrative, you can't find you can't find the figures that you're referring to.
Cut off this quarter. I'm sorry about that. I don't know what happened.
But that's that's the way it is in council file, so they didn't scan it or something.
Okay. We submitted the whole thing, but I'm not sure what happened.
I think it was folded.
Oh, it was folded. Oh, I see. They scanned it.
Yeah.
They scanned it with it being folded.
Okay. I can give you those figures when we get there.
No, I got it in the
Oh,
narrative.
you-
I just
oh, you have
couldn't-
it in the narrative.
I couldn't
Okay.
make sense of the chart.
Right.
Okay.
Okay. So this report covers the fourth quarter of fiscal year 2009, 2010, and compares the numbers to the prior quarter, to the same quarter of the prior fiscal year. Attachment 1 is the workers' comp division's numbers that report employees with industrial injury or illness, and they track light duty hours worked, IOD saved, and IOD spent. And when light duty hours worked and IOD saved increase, that's positive. And when IOD spent decreases, that's also positive. For the fourth quarter, we had sort of the opposite of that. Light duty hours decreased by approximately 10%. IOD saved decreased by about almost a little less than 7%. And IOD spent increased by 12.6%. So even though this is trending the opposite way we'd like compared to the prior fiscal year, overall the year's end numbers trend in the way we like, with an increase in light duty hours and IOD saved, and a decrease, although slight, about 1% in IOD saved from the prior year.
Why are the numbers changing?
That's kind of hard for me to answer. I know sometimes there's seasonal changes. We've also had changes in staff. Also salary increases, the automatic ones are recorded in here as well. So sometimes that attributes for the increase.
Would ERIP have any factor?
I don't believe so, because any payments would still, they would be taken out of light duty and IOD spent. Certainly, that wouldn't be in here. I was thinking of overall work comp.
I was hoping you were going to say all the great training personnel department.
That reflects on the other attachment, definitely, yes. So, and the workers' comp division works very hard to encourage departments to utilize light duty, and other departments can pull from people that are eligible for light duty.
Well, the audit report by the controller recently on work comp wasn't too positive.
No, and I can't speak to that.
Well, it would affect personnel department.
It would. We have some representatives from the workers' comp division if you'd like to get into more specific
Are they
questions,
here?
but they are here.
Have them
Yes.
come forward.
Okay.
Don't be shy.
We're saying thank you very much.
It's a very
Beth
Fragrant
Camargo
bill
with
lunch.
Personnel Department Workers' Comp.
Emmanuel Gagar, Personnel Department, Workers' Comp Division.
Have you seen the controller's report?
Yes, I have.
What do you think about it?
Well, it wasn't very good, but it was on an audit of the Workers' Comp City Attorney, not the Personnel Department.
Right.
Workers' Comp Division. Although we do work hand in hand.
I would hope so. So how do we fix it? Since the numbers aren't reflective of, shall we say, a more positive environment.
This is just one portion of it. The city attorney has received some more positions. We are down like 22 positions, but we do have bulletins out to hire hopefully some senior work comp analysts and 6 work comp analysts.
And how do we fix work comp for the employees who are getting hurt? What are we doing when someone is injured in the workplace other than get them the proper medical care? What are we doing about prevention, safety, whether they're jumping off of buildings or leaping tall buildings or riding motorcycles? And it's not only police and fire, but there's all kinds of other categories.
It's citywide. We have our safety, industrial hygienists and safety people have now moved on our side into the work comp section, and along with them and the department safety people, they meet regularly to try to prevent injuries in the first place.
So when an injury occurs, what type of follow-up is done with that particular department?
When they file a claim, they're supposed to also do an accident injury report,
Okay.
and that's submitted with the claim, and we try to investigate and see if we can prevent those injuries in the future.
What kind of cooperation do we get from the different departments?
I'm not sure exactly. I work more on the admin side, but I think it varies by department.
Well, the departments that aren't cooperating, that needs to be noted so the general managers can get on board.
Yes.
Because every time an employee is injured on duty and they're off of work and they're getting compensation, that creates a gap in the workplace in providing services. And if we're not taking care of our people and getting back to work, then there's a disservice to the public who's paying the bills in the end.
Right.
So we need to look at this whole work comp situation, not only from the city attorney's side, where according to the audit, cases lingered for a long period of time and there was no resolution. And I know Mr. Parks and myself, coming from the police department, if you don't have proper follow-up, sometimes people are gone for a long time and that vacation continues and you get paid without taxes, so you're making more money by not working than you are when you are working.
Right.
So when you can't get cash overtime, you go off injured on duty, you get a check without taxes taken out, it's not a bad situation. And it's right for the people who deserve it, but when you have abuse.
Few that don't. And then we've also, just in July, we implemented what we refer to as a managed care program. It's something new to the city. And we have a pre-authorization program where the initial treatment, where there's like certain guidelines of certain injuries, you're always going to need certain medications, you're always going to need crutches. We did an outreach to like 500 different providers and let them know that this has been implemented. If this is the injury, these things are automatically approved. You don't have to go through any kind of formal approval process. And that seems to be helping. And we have 4 to 5 specific vendors that we're also directing a lot of the like MRIs and pharmacy, and it seems to be making a big difference.
And that's after the injury. I'm trying to.
Well, I know, we're also trying to prevent the injuries.
That's the key. Mr. Parks.
You know, and I don't know whether it's, since we've been talking about this in this committee, it seems like the lawsuits that center around the interactive and things of that nature has at least subsided for the moment. So hopefully whatever training that we've asked personnel department to continue doing, because at one time every department was doing it separately with their own independent philosophy, and those were the cases that were getting wrapped up in the court. So I'm going to believe it's training until you prove differently. But
okay.
but let me just ask you just a couple of questions on attachment. Attachment 2. When we look at the chart there, I'm just assuming when you've granted more in your totals than you've been requested, that's an overlap of previous years or previous quarters?
Correct, pending from the previous.
Now, let me ask you, on the next chart that shows denied, is there any extra or different review? Because that's generally when things end up in lawsuits, when we get people at odds with each other. So what happens on the denied?
Well, we might consider changing this title because denied sometimes means resolved as well. They're just kind of out of this process here. But if they're denied, they maybe they don't need one anymore, or another resolution came about, or it's okay to deny requests that are unreasonable. That's the standard, a reasonable accommodation. So sometimes the requests are unreasonable and there's no other accommodation possible at that time.
I understand, but if there's the need of a more appropriate title, because again, generally that's the column of people that end up in lawsuits.
Don't worry about it.
The ones that we say we denied, and then they come back and said there was not a legitimate interactive process, and then we go to the courts. And so if we can refine that somewhat, I don't know what the right title is, but
okay.
Whatever that extra review is, or standards within the department, that they're just not denied, and it's not at a management level that's saying that we've done all we can.
Okay.
Okay. And then on attachment 3, again, on that last column over there where it says pending, now, is there a legal timeline in cases that are pending that we should have moved them, or they become stale, or how does that work?
There isn't a bright line of when, because each case is different. We take everything on a case-by-case basis. There are some in here, a few, that have lingered for a long time because they remain unplaceable. There's no position in the city that could accommodate their restrictions.
Okay, but then are they then at home?
They are at home off work, yes.
Now, then at some point in time, they go to what, state rate?
No, they will just continue on a leave. Or
Indefinitely?
Yes, until, if they are no longer cooperating with us, interacting, in the placement efforts, we will kind of separate them from placement or try to get them involved, but if they're not, we can separate them at that time. But it's sort of a stickier area of, this is kind of the end of the road in terms of reasonable accommodation, and so what then? We just keep trying and trying and trying.
Would you say
right
that
now.
they could be sent home and paid indefinitely?
Oh, they are not paid.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
the one.
Well, they're not
Right,
paid.
unpaid.
Okay, that's what I wanted to
Right.
do. Unpaid. Now, what drives that status? What is the tipping point that gets them through your efforts and cooperation and all that, and then what tips it to where you're now home and unpaid?
Employees are home and unpaid and in citywide placement. The personnel department is trying to place them after their department has tried an exhaustive search and cannot find anywhere within their department to accommodate the employees.
And is there some level of assessment whether their limits are reasonable also? That's part of that assessment?
Yes, that's part of their assessment.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, Paul?
Yeah, I know, and I haven't dealt with this issue for a few years, but I know there are a few companies that are expert in working with corporations and cities on reducing their workers' comp costs, you know, on both the safety end and in terms of the cases. Have we ever retained any of those kind of expert firms to do an analysis of our workers' comp process and see where we could implement some efficiencies?
Not that I'm aware of. I can find out. I mean, I've been there for 5 years, and we've never had anybody come in and look at workers' comp.
Because I know it's been a while since I dealt with this. I looked at this when I was in the legislature a few years ago. But there are a few companies that have had pretty good success in dramatically reducing workers' comp costs for cities. So if we've never looked at that analysis, it might be something that might be worthwhile.
Okay.
Okay.
That's it.
Recommendation for receive and file, and that'll be the direction on number 4. Thank you. I'm sorry, number 3. Number 4, please.
Number 4 is a request from the Department of Building and Safety for 19 new resolution position authorities for the creation of a green building division within the department. Subsequent to the release of the agenda, the Planning and Land Use Management Committee has waived consideration of the CEO report.
Okay.
Good afternoon. I'm Melissa Fleming with the CAO. As stated, the item before you is a CAO report relative to a request for staffing and associated fees for the proposed Los Angeles Green Building Code. In June of this year, the state of California adopted the state's first Green Building Standards Code, referred to as Cal Green. The city, through its enforcement agent, the Department of Building and Safety, will be required to enforce the state's Cal Green Code upon its effective date in a little over 2 months from now, January 1st, 2011. In accordance with previous council direction, the department has provided a draft ordinance that expands the scope of and provides local amendments to the Cal Green Code for adoption by the city. This new municipal code section is being referred to as the Los Angeles Green Building Code. The department has estimated that 38% of all plans checked and 20% of all permits issued will require adherence to the proposed Green Code. As with any new building code, the department's workload will increase due to the mandate to enforce the requirements of the new Green Code. Building and Safety has completed a time study to estimate the additional workload required for enforcement of this new code. In accordance with this time study, the department has requested 19 new resolution authority positions to provide plan check and services and to conduct inspections associated with the new code. In order to fully recover costs associated with these 19 staff members, the department has also proposed a fee of equivalent to 10% of their existing plan check and permit fees. As the proposed fee revenue will be deposited to the Building and Safety Building Permit Enterprise Fund and the requested staffing will be funded by the Enterprise Fund, there's no impact to the general fund. And I'm joined at the table by representatives of the Department of Building and Safety, and we're happy to answer any questions you may have.
Okay, thank you. The state adopted this requirement, and what type of appropriation did the state provide?
None.
So
Good afternoon, honorable council members.
You are who?
Osama Yunin with the Department of Building and Safety.
So the state adopted an ordinance and said implement without funding.
That is correct. It's a state code that we
So
must.
it's a mandate without funding.
Right.
Okay. And what if we don't comply? What is the
We would be liable
recourse?
as a city.
Pardon me?
We would be liable as a city with the state
Liable
for not
how?
enforcing the state law.
Liable
They
how?
could sue us for not enforcing the state law.
Okay. But they didn't provide any source of revenue to do this enforcement?
That is correct.
Okay. And the workload, are building permits up or down in the city of LA?
Good afternoon, council members. I'm Ifa Kashafi, Chief of Engineering Bureau. Currently, there is our Department of Statistics shows about 10% increase in the permit, in the revenue and permit activities in the department. And we have about 27% shortage in the staff. We have lost.
No, I'm not talking about staff, I'm talking about
Yeah, but
the
it's
workload.
Yeah,
You said
workload
that
is about
10%,
10% increase.
over what period?
Compared to the first quarter of the last fiscal year.
Okay, so workload is up 10%.
Yes.
Okay. And the enterprise zone, how much money is in the enterprise zone?
How much money we have?
How much money is in the enterprise zone?
The enterprise fund budget for the current fiscal year is $90 million in revenue, and then obviously an associated expenditure of roughly the same $90 million, of which about $10 million is in a reserve.
Okay, so there's $90 million in the enterprise fund.
Correct, that's the enterprise fund budget.
Okay, and when was the last time building fees were increased? Permit fees?
Yes. Ray Chan, Executive Officer, the Department of Building Safety. The last time we increased building permit fees was October of 2009.
And increased what percent?
We increased in general approximately 15%. I just want to make a correction of what Ms. Kashefi said just now. It is true that permit activity increased by 10%, but revenues were actually increased by 30% first quarter compared to last year first quarter.
Okay, we're talking about the fees, though, increased October 2009, which is a year ago. What percent increase was that?
Approximately overall 15%.
So there's a 15% increase on individuals that wanted to build in LA, 50% increase in the fees.
That was approved by.
I'm not asking who's approved, I'm just asking direct questions.
Right.
15% increase to build something in Los Angeles.
Right.
Okay, I'm just trying to get the facts and the numbers so I'll be able to respond to this.
Sure.
Okay, why can't existing staff conduct the required inspections mandated by state?
Currently, we have, due to the EREP and the budget cuts, we lost over 240 engineers and inspectors.
200 what?
40, over 200. I think 244. And our current backlog from the time we receive a plan to assign it to a staff to check is 1.5 months, about 6 weeks.
Okay.
And that is about several weeks in addition to what we had in last fiscal year. The current manpower is not sufficient to respond to any new additional work resulted from this green
So
unit.
240 left the city. How many are currently employed in building safety?
Total citywide about 690, I believe.
Including co-enforcement, new construction, that's approximately 730.
Okay, so 730 positions, 240 left.
Yes.
Okay, and then what percentage of the anticipated workload applies to the city's proposed green code, and that would exceed the California green code mandates? There's a mandate by the California code.
Right.
Okay, what percentage of the anticipated workload applies to the city's proposed green code? Because I understand the city's code is more extensive than what the state's requiring.
Right.
So, when you got the state requirement, for example, you must do this, we've exceeded that, and now that adds more work, obviously.
Yes.
Okay, what percentage of the anticipated workload applies to our imposed green code in the city of Los Angeles versus what the state requires?
I'm going to defer this question to our, green code expert,
Okay.
Mr. Osama Yunin.
What the City of Los Angeles did at the instructions we received from City Council, we actually increased the applicability of the Green Code to include additions and alterations, and to include all residential buildings over 3 stories. Because the way the state code is written now, it stops at 3 stories residential. This,
Okay.
But I don't have a percentage of how much that in numbers compares to the mandatory, the 3 stories and non-residential. But yeah, a lot of our work involves single family, and that's under mandatory. But I don't have an answer.
Okay, you don't have that. What happens if the anticipated revenue does not occur? What happens if the anticipated number does not materialize? And we've got these 19 positions
Right,
that have been
there's always
brought.
a possibility, but most likely that's not going to happen. There's a reason for that. because when we did the revenue estimation with CAO, we actually used the lowest permit activities number to base on to do this 10% calculation. And as I mentioned just now, compared to the same time last year, which was the lowest, we are already 10% beyond that. And so that is why, we are very certain, that we will achieve that type of revenue.
No, is this increase for single-family residence or for commercial,
Mostly it's
industrial?
actually for new buildings and for, also for commercial industrial buildings. The reason the city code is kind of different than the state code is because the city already had those the provisions regarding additions, alterations to begin with before the Cal Green Code came into the picture. So the fact that with the Cal Green Code, okay, which Mr. Osama Union helped the state to develop, he represented the city to go up there. After they put the Cal Green Code together, we have to adopt that state mandate, but we cannot go lower in other standards if we are very established over the past 2 years with the city green code. And that's why we have a little bit more extensive code than the state code itself.
Okay. So you anticipate the revenues will be there, but if they're not there, what happens? Because we know that the economy is not going as positive as we wish. So I don't see a lot of cranes downtown as I did see, years ago or months ago.
You're absolutely right. I'm going to answer the questions in two parts. First of all, if we do not have enough revenue, CEO will definitely control our hiring plans. We will not be able to, we have to, for example, we're not allowed to backfill any of the attritions that's still occurring, even though after the ERIP, because there are people, more and more people will go back to the normal retirement as the time from now, as the time from ERIP becomes, longer and longer. So Melissa over here would not allow us to backfill should that is that the case. I want to make, just to give a little bit more comfort to council members about our enterprise fund reserve. At one time, we were as low as, at the end of last year, we anticipate that we will have $10 million carryover fund, so to speak, at the end of the fiscal year. We end up approximately $12 million. And for the past 3 months, our carryover fund has increased from $12 million all the way to $15 million. So that's kind of encouraging. And, we know that there will be, we anticipate the worst as always, but it seems that in this case, we're pretty solid. But if things are not going the right way, then I'm sure that CEO will control our expenditure spending and the salary spending.
And there's currently $90 million in the enterprise fund.
For budget-wise.
Now, is that actual revenue, or is that?
That is our budget amount. $90 million is the.
Okay, well, how much is there actually in the bank?
Approximately 15 million.
15 million.
Right now, as we speak.
Okay, but you anticipate having 90 million, but.
No, 15 million is just like a little saving in the bank, so to speak, if you want to use the layman term for that.
So where's the 90?
The 90 is our anticipated revenue.
Okay, so you actually have 15 in the bank, but you anticipate it being up to 90. So if I asked you how
department
much.
will be incurring expenditures associated with that revenue. So as the revenue comes in, they will also be having expenditures associated with that. So they will have basically a cushion of 15 million at all times, and it will waiver.
It pays for your workforce, right?
Correct.
It probably is the reserve, if you wanted to acknowledge it's like a reserve fund.
I mean, but the 90, the difference between 15 and 90 is you're paying for your workforce, the people that are actually doing the job. That's your special fund.
Right, right. The $90 million is our anticipated revenue for the entire fiscal year. We also anticipate that we will spend about $90 million revenue. But it seems that if we control better, then we could have more money saved and put into this reserve fund to increase the amount from 15 millions to whatever.
And that 90 million is generated from permit fees?
From permit fees only, sir, not including this green program.
So this green program would add additional 10% to those?
No, it won't be. It would be approximately only $3 million in 1 year. The reason that, because the enterprise fund is $90 million, but the enterprise fund also includes a lot of other revenue. For example, like the interest in the bank, that would not be, there would not be a surcharge on that, for this fee. This is purely only for the plan check and permit fees that would apply to the type of structures, the types of projects that are subject under, under this state mandate. So the bottom line is we anticipate only $3.1 million increase in revenue based on this 10% fee charge. In addition to that, the 10% fee charge, other than the fact that we did a cost recovery calculation, also this is based on the agreement within all the 89 jurisdictions within the Southern California. And we have a document right here we all agree that, we will apply 10% because this is an unfunded, state mandate. We want to have a 10% fee. As a matter of fact, Glendale City has already established an ordinance to charge 15%.
Well, maybe they didn't jack the rates up 15% last year.
The reason we jacked it 15% last year is because we had not touched our fee for 17 years before that. And that's why the council allowed us to increase the fee to 15% last year. We're still among the lowest within the region, even though we increased the fees for 15%.
So what's the average fee? What would be the average fee?
I'm sorry, Councilmember.
What would be the average fee?
They're very expensive. I've just paid some.
What would be the average fee? It depends on the type of job. It could be anywhere from a kitchen, kitchen remodeling could be just a couple $100, all the way to high-rise building.
Hey, the Ritz-Carlton that they built down next to LA Live, what was the fee for that?
We probably collect approximately, Ritz-Carlton itself, by itself, we probably collect approximately $600,000 plan check and permit fees for that particular.
So we need more big hotels to collect more money.
And it seems that there are more coming in. We just get,
Okay.
So.
Okay, no, I just figure how we get the money.
Yes, sir.
And we have the balance in that fund. Okay, those are the questions that I had on this. Mr. Kretz?
Yeah, I've heard I've heard arguments on both sides of this approach. One of the arguments against it is that you don't necessarily need the 19 people separately, that you could train all of your staff to do this, and then they'd each be able to handle it. What's your response to that?
Council member, this is a brand new code for us throughout the state. We have no expertise. There is no expertise that exists. It's a very specialized, highly specialized trade. And for us to handle it correctly, to be able to do the work efficiently and effectively, and more importantly, to be able to serve the public the way they deserve, the service they deserve and expect come January 1st, we need to train people, and we need to make sure they gain that expertise rapidly. And the only way they're going to do it if they can be doing it repeatedly over and over again. Plus, when this, because it is a new code, because it's something we've never done, the state hasn't done before, once we implement, this is going to be situations that the state didn't account for, nobody's thought about, and we need to be dynamic about it and be able to come up with policies, make up with implementation plans that will make it practical to enforce. So the need to develop expertise in a hurry, I think, is essential. Over time, I think once we figure this thing out, we could look, and we would look at making it streamlined and disperse it throughout the department. This is very similar to the disabled access requirement when it first came in. We had separate groups. I mean, before we had separate groups, we were making mistakes all over the place. But once we concentrated it, people developed expertise, and later on, the inspection portion of it, we were able to actually streamline into the regular operation. And that would be the approach here.
So there's a state code. It's new. So who's going to train the people on the new state code?
We will have to do our own training.
Well, how are you going to train people if you don't have any expertise?
Well, we don't have the expertise that everybody will need, but we have individuals that have the expertise. We work in
How they have
as a region.
expertise if it's new and it's never been done before?
We were part of the development of this code.
If I may introduce Mr. Osama Yunin, he is not just the chief of mechanical engineering division, and at the same time, Mr. Yunin also represents the city for the past 2 years to work very closely to establish this green code along with the state expertise. Also, he has been, teaching, giving lectures to other jurisdictions within Southern California about this code requirements. In addition, he also outreach to all the organizations such as Central City Association, the Building Owner and Managers Association, VICA, and also, you know, with BIC.
So you have one expert, is that what you're saying?
I'm sorry?
So you're saying you have one expert?
We have one, we have one expert in this
Okay.
department. And this is like the green cal, it's not just a couple of chapters, it's almost a third as thick as our building code to begin with. This is the green code. So it's not like just like a few chapters within the code, sir. I'm sorry.
Could you pass that around? That,
Sure, absolutely.
the green code book?
And Councilman, just one more thing. I mean, the code in a whole is something new, and we need, as far as being a code, it is something new, and we have to learn how to implement it in a reasonable way that's effective and efficient. But the topics in there are experts all over, some within the city, some, there are agencies there that are specific topic experts. And we need to learn from the experts in the individual field really fast and become expert as in the code as a whole.
And the people that you're gonna hire, these 19 folks, they have no expertise in this, so they're gonna have to be trained.
Correct.
Are you the trainer?
I will be doing the training, and we will also rely on experts in the specific topics.
But there are no experts, it's new.
Right, as a code. But there are topics in there that people have done. I mean, we have green buildings, there are green building experts in LA and outside LA that are they have expertise in topics covered by this code, and we would also rely on them too. But I will be doing the training, correct?
Now, as far as the costs of this, I know it's been mentioned that we had a 15% increase. On the other side, I know we've heard from business community groups that have said, well, even though you have the 15% increase, you're among the lowest of cities in LA County, and we actually want the 10% increase. How do we actually compare with other cities even after the 10% increase?
I think the reality is, I think more than most of the cities, once they implement this green code, they will increase the fee by at least 10%. As I mentioned, Glendale has already established ordinance and has been approved by the council to increase the fee by 15%. So from a ratio standpoint, we will still be the lowest amount, you know, the amount the surrounding jurisdiction. And that's why our proposal has been widely supported by different organizations.
And I think also, I guess by not doing it and adding this mandate when we're already short-staffed, I think the business community that I'm hearing from is concerned that an already slow process will become a snail's pace process, which in a city that's trying to become more business-friendly, because of our financial situation, we're really backtracking on that, is my understanding.
You're absolutely correct. Our fees, you know, is amongst the lowest, despite what Councilmember Parkman feel about his project. But we provide very good service, right, Councilmember Parks?
Very good.
Thank you.
Very expensive, but very good.
One other question. Are we able to either bring back laid-off people for these positions that have worked for the city previously, or are we able to identify people that are in the process of being exposed to layoffs and able to grab those folks?
Our goal is for the engineering position, use some of the engineers who transferred to the other agencies when they felt they were targeted by layoff. So we'll try to bring them because they were already trained in some aspect of the codes. And for inspection, there is a reserve list from inspectors who were laid off. So we have to use that list. Yes.
So we have some hope that when we do this, we'll be able to bring back some of the folks that we lost but are capable.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you.
Looking at this, a lot of these deal with the water, at least the first part, shower head, kitchen faucet, metering faucets, gravity tank type water closets, urinals. When it looks, it's like the manufacturer, whoever's manufacturing these products needs to comply with the code on the green code. Now, I've only gotten to the water section. I'll get to the other section, but that's like a quarter of this, up to page 63. We're talking about sinks and shower heads. So trying to think what obligations are going to be on the manufacturers on the products that are designed for the use within the facilities, whether it be commercial, residential, or industrial.
One thing we simplified, the whole complexity in our report is, maybe we shouldn't do that, is we did not mention the opening of the floodgate with all these so-called green products. We have a test lab, and by code by city ordinance, that any of these new products, new green shower head or bathroom or sink, whatever it is, they need to go through our test lab to get testing and to comply. And also not to mention that, green is not just the city matter, is also the nationwide and national-wise. We have also a lot of overseas products trying to flood the market. And that's why we have to have enough staffing to make sure that we will review those products. And so it's not just a plan check inspection, but it's plan check inspection and also product approval that we need to have all these people to do.
Well, if they do a plan check, do we tell them that you have to have this, just like a good housekeeping seal of approval, or United Under Laboratories, that for electrical, that it complies? Like you go to a restaurant, it has a grading system by the county. It seems that looking at this, whether it be a roof or some other material, that there needs to be, and I see shower heads again. It seems like a lot of this stuff deals with water, redundant. It has to have a stamp that it's certified for the city of Los Angeles or certified for the state of California. So any product that's coming in, when it goes to the plan check, that's one issue. Then do you folks go out to the site and actually look to see if that shower head complies, or that toilet complies, or that sink wash complies?
That is accurate. We actually will have to check and verify through plan check and inspection that all the products they use are in compliance. Like Mr. Chan mentioned, I mean, we don't mandate everything to go through our test lab. I mean, there are some, if they go through third party and they get them certified, we accept them. But for those products, and there's a lot of them now coming out on the market because of this green, that they are new and they want us as a city to look at them, evaluate them, and approve them.
But then we should have a stamp that goes on and say it's certified by the city of LA. So a contractor or a homeowner that's going to go to Home Depot to purchase something will know that it's okay, it's certified. I mean, we should do that as a responsible city if we're going to mandate that they have this.
That's a good suggestion. We're going to evaluate that, yes.
Right.
It's good suggestion.
I mean, it just, because I'm looking at this, what's the salary for this position? The salary for the 19 positions?
The
I'm sure it's going to
total-
be about $80,000+.
Each position, yes. Each position ranges from 148 to the top supervisor.
Wait, start where?
148,000.
It starts at 148?
That's the highest
No,
of all
that-
the positions.
That is for the division chief positions. There are only one position with that, only one position. And that is like a chief management analyst position.
148 is the top. What's the
Correct.
start?
The lowest position requested is roughly $45,000 clerk typist.
45?
That's correct. The bulk of the positions are in the $80,000 to $100,000 range.
And we're going to train these people to do this job, and they're going to make $80,000 to $140,000.
That's correct.
And we're laying off people from the city of Los Angeles because we don't have enough money.
This is a very, it seems that we are not hiring a lot of new staff from outside. I think we answered Councilmember Carrasco's question just now. The engineering position, we will ask for lateral transfer within the city. So, this lateral transfer, I don't know whether that will help the general fund or not. And as for the inspectors, we have a reserve list. Those are the people who get laid off.
Well, what I'm looking here, the 19 positions, assistant superintendent of building 2, that's probably the $148,000 job. And at the bottom's a clerk typist, one clerk typist at $45,000, and building mechanical inspector, 9 of those, senior building mechanical inspector, structural engineer, another structural engineer, mechanical engineer associate. I mean, we're building a bureaucracy within the bureaucracy that's already existing.
We are not building a bureaucracy, sir, because if you have to consider the amount of workload that we have to deal with, Plus, just like when we start with the Disabled Access Division, approximately 24 years ago, this is a full division. We have to not deal with the implementation of the policy. We have to deal with products approval. We have to deal with the process of the other jurisdictions so we will be consistent. We have to work with the states to further improve the code. We also have to go really do the plan check and do the inspection. If we don't have to go through the layoff that we did, we would have set aside some people to handle this job without asking for new positions. But right now, we are right into the bone. As a matter of fact, our workload is really putting so much pressure on all of us. In addition, the plan check backlog has jumped from 16 days to 28 days. Our co-enforcement, 3 days response time now is over 20 days response time. We just don't have enough staff to do the work.
I understand that. And if you want to do this voluntary, we're still going to charge a 5% fee if the person wants to
The
voluntarily.
warranty is a higher level. It's almost like the silver and the gold, if you want a higher standard of compliance.
No, we're talking about volunteer, individual developers who'd like you to provide them with suggestions. We're still going to charge those people a 5% fee on their
Right.
building permit.
I think there's a miscommunication. I'm going to ask Mr. Union to explain.
Right. There's a tier system that the state came up with, and this is similar to the LEED system where it says LEED, Gold, Silver, Platinum. And as a matter of fact, the existing LEED program that the city have will be sunsetted as this comes into effect, so development doesn't have to go through two similar sets of requirements through two different departments. So the state did that because the development community and some cities, they want to be more green than what the state mandates at the lowest level. So they want to say, we want to be greener than that, but how do we do it? So similar to LEED, they told me, you want to be greener, go LEED Silver. You want to be greener than that, go LEED Gold. So the state wanted to take that approach so people don't feel like, well, now we don't have LEED, what are we going to do? So tell them, fine, if you want to be greener, go tier 1, even greener than that, go tier 2. But with that, it's similar to the LEED system where there is much more work that is involved. And they're going to come to us if they wish. They don't have to do that. This is purely up to the applicant. If they wish, because for marketing reasons, say, you know what, I'm going to build a tier 1 building or tier 2 because I want to make a placard for myself and sell it as such, it has a lot of requirements in there that are in addition to the mandatory that we actually have to verify because now we are putting on the CFO, this is a tier 1 or tier 2 building, and we cannot make such a statement unless we really verify it.
So they're going to pay 5% additional on their building permit fee.
Right, and our incentives as a city, now we have incentives based on LEED Silver, we actually going to switch those over to the tier so they are consistent. Otherwise you'd have mandatory Cal Green, incentive, LEED.
Okay.
It doesn't work.
Question? We got some public speakers. Okay, Martha Cox. Martha Cox,
Yes,
come in?
right here.
Okay.
Try to be quick. I know you need to get to another meeting.
We're gonna, okay.
You wish to
we're
give
gonna be
comments?
delayed. Go ahead.
My name is Martha Cox in Nitickman. I'm with the Building Owners and Managers Association. We represent over 350 commercial office buildings. About two-thirds of those are in the city of Los Angeles. As a statewide organization, BOMA worked closely with the California Building Standards Commission to ensure that the Cal Green Code promoted the green buildings while not overly burdening the construction process. The LA Department of Building and Safety is taking the Green Code to the next level by seamlessly integrating the green components of construction into the plan check inspection process. Additionally, the new LA Code covers some aspects of construction in existing buildings which the state law did not cover. The state law does not talk about existing buildings. It really talks about new development, and my members are the existing buildings, which the LA law does cover. These provisions, while clearly enhancing the green quality of buildings, are not burdensome and, in fact, are an extension of what many building owners are already incorporating into their tenant improvement projects. We've had the opportunity to work closely with Osama Union, and we applaud him for his collaborative approach. And we have reviewed the fees, and we feel that they are reasonable for the amount of work that the department is doing, and we thereby support this
Okay.
ordinance. Thank you.
Guy Lipa?
Guy Lipa, I'm here on behalf of Council President Eric Garcetti. Just wanted to quickly pass on the Council President's support of the new Cal Green Code merging with the Green Building Code. It's a motion that the Council President introduced with Mr. Reyes, and on January 1st, we're going to have 2 codes if we don't figure out a way to implement this quickly, and that will not be good for the development community. So he just wanted to urge the quick passage of this so that we can pass it in council and have one code that will be green and we'll be good to go.
Okay, thank you. Kimberlina Wheatom? Kimberlina? K-I-M-B-E-R-L-I-N-A. Kimberlina, not here. Next one is Michelle Rockian. Okay, Michelle?
Michelle G. I'm with the Los Angeles Business Council. So the LABC, along with many stakeholders, work with the City Council and the Department of Building and Safety, namely OSAMA, to create and implement the private sector green building ordinances back in 2007. Many stakeholders worked, including the development community to the environmental community. It was a very collaborative, happy, harmonious process. And something was put on the books, of which we all approved.
Keep going, it's all right.
Okay.
The building will burn
With-
down, but we're here.
Okay. With the recent, we support.
May I have your attention, please? May I have your attention, please?
You have it.
This is the Office of Public Safety. We are testing the PA system at this time. This is only a test.
Well, thank you very much. Okay, keep going.
Okay. So with the recent mandate of Cal Green Building Code, the Department of Building and Safety, especially Osama Yunan, have really worked diligently to ensure that both of these new codes have been synthesized. We've worked with them for the past 6 months in sometimes weekly stakeholder meetings, which is a lot of time and effort on our parts, along with the similar stakeholders that were included in the 2007 construction. And I just want to let you know that the LABC fully supports this request and also the creation of the Green Building Division within the building safety, and also the fee because of the unfunded mandate. So.
Okay, thank you. Arn Williams? What's the first name?
Ann.
Ann, okay, Ann.
Messy handwriting?
Well, Williams is clear, but not Ann.
Arnie, you can call me that.
All
Good
right,
afternoon.
It looks like Arnie.
Hey.
Are you Arnie?
Ann Williams with the Central City Association. We're pleased to be here today to support the Department of Building and Safety in their efforts to implement the local ordinance for Cal Green. The new ordinance is more efficient and more enforceable, and we applaud the city for taking proactive steps to improve the business climate in Los Angeles. We do understand that this move requires difficult personnel decisions and may put the city in a more uncertain financial position. However, this is a brand new system for both the public and private sectors, which will require specialized training and expertise. The increased permit fees will help in offsetting the cost of necessary staff and training. And the last thing we need in this economy is to have inspectors out in the field further delaying projects because of their inexperience and lack of knowledge. We hope to have your support for this matter that we think is important.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Parks.
Thank you very much. You know, one thing in listening to comments and the issues, I agree that we should be going to one code, and I agree that there's some urgencies, and I think the fees are reasonable. I just don't quite understand why we're approaching it in the fashion that we are, in the sense that when we look at this whole issue of what we're going to go through a training issue, in essence, we're talking about training people off the street for this, that number one, may never have been an inspector before, and training them to do something that's unique and important. And it appears that we're bypassing the experienced inspectors who are currently doing the job and now adding some criteria to where they do their job with additional criteria. The other thing I have a concern about is that if we're going to draw the line, the threshold at 200,000 and above, and we have this small group of people that are going to be working on those, at some point with the volume of work, they'll be handling all of the new work. Then what will the other inspectors be doing who are handling the non-green work? And so that's the issue. It appears to me, it appears we're going backwards in how we should be deploying people. And I don't know whether 19 is above or below, but if the money is being commingled into the enterprise fund, it appears we're not distinguishing them one body versus another body. So it appears that if we're going to make this work by January 1st, the people we should concentrate on are experienced inspectors who now understand there's a larger scope to their job. So,
Yes, fair statement. I think the first one I can answer easily, and that's the miscommunication probably on our part. We did not make it very clear. We are not hiring people right out from the street to do this important jobs. We need, assuming that we need 19 people to do this whole chunk of work. And with there are one clerk typist, there are 10 inspectors, and also the rest, they're engineers. As was mentioned, engineers would probably go through lateral transfer, okay? And it could be from a general fund position. It could be from some of the, former LADBS employees who left the department because of scare of layoff, just about a few months ago. And they might want to come back. So these are not completely non-experienced people that we hire from the street. As for the 10 inspectors positions, we really have a large pool of inspectors right now on the layoff reserve list who have been let go already. Some get transferred to other departments, okay, like Bureau of Sanitation, Housing Department, and many of them, they get laid off. This also would give them an opportunity to come back because we are bounded by civil service rule that we cannot go outside to hire some people and bypass this list. So we are definitely not hiring people with no experience from the street to do that. In addition to that, when we hire all these people come in to do this, they're not necessary just to do with this program. We may take some of our experienced people, could be a mix, to go into this program while their position will be backfilled by this new hire to handle that. We try to pick the best to support this program. So I hope that will answer, your...
The problem I have is that when you say that, practicality, and then say we want to create a green division, it seems like we're doing just the opposite of 12 and 2, or what planning is doing, in the sense of saying, I have a group of planning people that do the whole project.
Right.
Now, what we've always been criticized for in the same city or in the same department, people draw lines and say, well, if you're a green building, it's mine. If it's not, it's theirs. As opposed to giving a broader service of saying, I'm trained to inspect. And that's where I'm...
You're totally right. And I'm going to go back to our implementation of a disabled access division about 20-something years ago. When we first started, the first 2 years, we have a specialized division, just handled, disabled access. Then the third year, we started to dissolve, the inspection, training all the other inspectors to handle disabled access. But, you still need those inspectors because the workload is still there. It's just you generalize the implementation. Instead of just a specialized team to do it, you teach it to everybody, but each inspector will have to handle less cases every day. Then the 6th and 7th years, we try to also now to get the smaller jobs, for example, like addition remodeling, allow the other engineers other than the disabled access engineers to handle the plan check. So right now, up to this point, we only have 5 people in disabled access division, so to speak, compared to when we first started, we had 30 people. And the green program will be the same thing. It will not be continued to create another division for the rest of this, eternity. But it's going to be at least for the first 2 years.
25 years is kind of like eternity for...
Well, yeah, actually we have evolved along the way, and still we need to have a very small unit. We have this very small unit of 5 people for approximately 10 years already, sir.
Yeah. Well, I would say, those are my concerns.
Yes.
I just would have preferred that we created a situation in which, again, with the funding, that we created a situation where our inspector corps was assuming the responsibility to where the public didn't have to deal with our separation of responsibilities and allow people that are in the city to perform the inspection task. And that's what I think I've heard
You're
from
right.
the development community is that we're so fragmented that even though we may sit across the table from each other, people draw boxes and say, I can take you up to line A, the person over here does line B. And again, what we're trying to do, I thought with 12.2, was to break down those barriers and say, when you give a task to a person, they can do it all. Yes. And the other issue is that if you are going to add people to your overall engineering and your inspector corps, then you get into the elevation of another superintendent and other assistant superintendent. Then you're getting into structure that never goes away. You're doing overlays upon overlays. And I think that's where a lot of times, due to people, issues of their own parochial view, it becomes their domain. And does are they running the show, or is they helping the show run? And that's what my biggest concern is, how you would operate. And I don't know whether we would need less people had we merged the function into the existing core and said, do you need 10 or 15 people? Do you need, and then people that may be training them, and then clearly there's a need for somebody to be reporting on this, but the structure as it is drawing a box around a function that appears it's going to be here forever. It's not going to go away. In fact, the whole department will be adopting these policies versus them being run as an individual, a pilot or something. That's my concern.
What if we put a term on it? A term on it?
Well, I think that the issue is, I would just like to see, rather than create the superstructure, is there any thought in how you can merge these functions into what you have? And do you need the superstructure of the assistant superintendent and all that other stuff? That would, you know.
Internally, because we need to train our people real quick to implement it as of January the 1st, we don't have the luxury to, to train all the inspector engineers. And besides, by doing that, it would not be most beneficial because everybody will have a different interpretation and they will only confuse the industry. And that's one of the.
But that's why we train them.
Right.
To reduce the interpretation.
Councilmember, I totally agree. Some of us, they are not just as trainable as others.
But see, I think the limit you have is that if you create a small cadre,
right,
the industry, when you go forward, is going to believe there's a resource. When you create a very small cadre, they're going to show up and you're going to say, okay, they can only handle 12 of these a month. Well, they leave here thinking the workload is going to be handled. So we've created a small group of people to handle a workload greater than their capability, and then we're right back into the same situation. And then 6 months from now, you'll come in and say, if we charge them another 10%, we can then create an expedited unit. We've gone through this before.
No, that's a very good concern, Councilmember. I assure you that we monitor the workload and also the staffing and also the output of our staff very closely. Number two, we have internally, we have a 3 years plan to try to make this unit or this division and eventually to a very small group for the plan check and inspection responsibility to handle by everyone. But this is not just the time to do it. There's too many uncertainties and too many interpretative issues. We have to work with the politics, at the state level. It's just not a good time to do it. And besides, we're the mega, jurisdiction. And if any lawsuit land, it will be LA City. That's what happened with us with the Disabled Access 20, and we don't want that to happen, sir. But we have a 3 years plan.
There's an attorney or an individual who sues on disabled access all the time. They're after him right now, but he's been suing on that. Goes into a restaurant, the mirror's 2 inches too slow. Right. So, I mean, he's made a career out of that. There's a 6-month report due on the status of this, is that correct? When did the state law, when was it signed?
This code was published July of this year, and we have until.
When was it signed by the governor?
No, this is a code. It was not. It was a directive from the governor, the Building Standards Commission of the state, which is the agency of the state in charge of adopting and publishing building codes, similar to the building code, plumbing, electrical, and so forth. It's the same agency that published this
So
code.
the agency published this,
Right, and they give us as a municipality 180 days to start enforcement.
and we decided to extend it to make it broader.
We
extended
we
the
extended the
green.
applicability of it to include what we already have in our existing program as the city of Los Angeles. Otherwise, we would have been going backwards on the green.
Okay, so there's still that situation of the manufacturers of the materials, looking at that book that you passed out, all the materials that they talk about, all the equipment they talk about, it must meet a state standard. Is there any requirement that people who sell in the city of Los Angeles adapt that equipment, materials, to this particular standard? There needs to be, if we're going to be enforceable, to say, like the light bulb has to meet some kind of a standard. The faucet needs to meet a standard, because I'm looking at all the water
Right.
components they have in there, the flooring, the roof, whatever.
Right.
There needs to be some type with the material industry to say there's a state law. We have to make sure that we inspect it, but the consumer doesn't know when they go out to buy a faucet or to buy a door or whatever. There needs to be some requirement, and it should be a state law, that says that materials that are sold in the state of California, because of this green initiative, need to comply with this standard. So whether it's the low-flow toilet or the faucet that only has so much water, I mean, you gotta go to the manufacturers, and if we exclude the manufacturers, we're really doing a disservice to everybody.
Right, that's an excellent point. And the manufacturers were included at the state level, first of all.
We need to make it a law. If there's a law that says we have to enforce this, there needs to be a law that says they can't sell anything in the state of California unless it meets this mandate. You can't buy a car unless it meets the federal standard.
Right.
You can't get a car that comes in from a foreign country unless it's adapted for United States standards.
Right.
That's what we need to do with this. Now, maybe every state doesn't have this, but if California's adopted this statewide, we need to then put the pressure on the manufacturers to make sure that they comply. So when your inspectors look at this, this complies, and there's a mandate that it complies, and some kind of a seal of approval that it complies.
And there's such a law already at the state level and also in the city code. It's just that.
The manufacturers.
For the manufacturers. But the standards, because this is a new product, the standards may not have completely established. And that is why we need some people, as I mentioned earlier, we don't just do plan check and inspection. We have to do product approvals. You're right, they need to go through not just us, but any other recognized local lab in order for them to be sold in Los Angeles or in California. The problem is because this is the new product, they might not have established all the standards already for all the products that hit our way. So, and that's why, we are still working with the state on many of these standards. This is just a code itself to go out there. A lot of things still need to be established along the way, sir.
And just to add on that, I think we do have two major things we need to do as a city. I think we need to do enormous outreach to our citizens, to our local manufacturers, to the contractors, to the architects, and all the professional organization, to let them know about this code, to let them know what to expect. And as this group of people start finding out common problems, how we're going to solve them, we need to come up with solutions, and we need to do this outreach so people don't go through what you just described, which would happen if we don't really do quite an outreach.
So a person builds a 12-unit apartment building, and all the faucets don't comply, the shower heads don't comply, they spend all the money, and then you go out and inspect it, and they got to replace everything? I mean, we need to be upfront so they'll know.
That would not happen because they have to go through plan review, and during the plan review, before they buy anything, we tell them, no, this doesn't comply, you need to use something else.
So that's part of that requirement.
Right.
And whatever is under construction, they get grandfather already, sir.
I think the other thing we will face as City of LA, because we are the biggest city, because we have a lot of local manufacturing, are people going to say, you know what, I want to be green, I want to use recycled material, I have this idea about renewable energy. And they don't want to spend tens, hundreds of thousands of dollars to go to ULs and all these national organizations to get approval. They're going to come to us and say, you know what, I want to use it in LA, I want to see if it works. And I think we will have to look at these products and do our best to help them comply so they can use it and get the technology and the green technology going and flourishing in the city.
Well, none of us are against technology that's green, that saves the planet, what's left of it. We just want to make sure that it's done in a proper fashion. so the consumer who's paying the bill doesn't end up feeling more government intrusion, and we're doing a disservice versus a service. No one that I understand is against saving what we've got left, whether the landfills or the water or whatever else it is. I mean, we're a society that has really used up a lot of our resources.
Well, the people that are paying this bill, though, as you say, are the business community, and they're actually asking us to do it.
Yeah, that surprises me that the speakers from the different entities are supporting this. I would not have imagined that they would be supportive of the increased fee. So
They're pass-through.
they're passed, that's true. So what I'm thinking, you're gonna give a 6-month report.
Yes,
Is this gonna go to Budget and Finance?
yes.
It has not been referred to Budget and Finance.
Well, we should refer to Budget and Finance.
Mr. Parks can request that.
A little more consideration of your alignment and the number of people, so that we won't have to have a marathon in Budget and Finance.
Yes, sir. How about if we give a, a very small summary to, explain the,
I think you need to.
You just shave your 19 numbers down.
Relook at your special functions, and, I mean, clearly, they need to do it, but do we need to do it in how you've constructed it as a standalone 19-person unit? Or can we do it a different way, that you have trained people that are gonna train? Our workforce is who we need to train, not a special unit that gets overwhelmed in a week.
we'll definitely, reconsider the whole structure. How about that?
So we have an option, approve, disapprove, or no recommendation.
No, I'll approve it, I just wanna see that they give more thought on their configuration.
Yeah, I'd certainly approve it as well, although my understanding is that if we try to train the whole workforce, we wind up taking a lot longer time period as opposed to hiring the 19 people, or whether it could be shaved to 18 or whatever, and then having them gradually train the rest of the workforce as they're doing their work. So as I understand it, it makes the most sense the way you're proposing it.
And that's why we need a 3 years timetable, to make sure that we will make this, unit to scale it down after all staff get the proper training, and after we have determined all the interpretation during this 3 years' time.
And
The way
Councilman,
I look at it, like the police officer who's on patrol, he'll arrest a drunk driver, he'll arrest a burglar, a robber, he'll get in a pursuit, a generalist. And with building safety should have someone who's trained in all those disciplines, whether it be as the disabilities or the green or whatever else you folks deal with.
Yes.
Where one person can do it all. The same, we don't have a police officer who does this, that, the other.
Sure.
They're generally trained to handle those responsibilities.
and Councilman, just one comment on that. That is really our biggest concern with this. We don't want it to become a hindrance to construction. Green is a good thing, and as a city, we do embrace it, as the Councilman
No
mentioned.
one's against it.
Right. And,
Just
but
your
we don't
pro-
want to give it a black eye by having somebody be delayed, or someone getting these subjective opinions based on no experience, and become green is expensive. And that's what happened with the lead system. People started getting these negative images. It's too expensive, it's too subjective, the guy doesn't agree with me, and these are real life examples that we've seen with other systems, and we don't want it to turn into that.
But
If
there
we
was no
have,
standard, there's a standard with this. And hopefully.
they had a rating system.
Well, how
They're
would you
very
improve
similar
it?
to that. They're very similar. But because their enforcement was all over the place, and so they had people that were strong in one area, weak in a different area. So the area they were weak on, they may give this harsh interpretation, say, I'm not going to accept this. And we looked at that when we really thought this through a lot to see what is the best way. We want this to go through as smoothly as possible, and as reasonably as possible, and as inexpensive as possible for development. And we figured if we get this core group, at least for the start, and train them real good, and training comes, with our business at least, with repetition. You check 100 plans, 200, 1,000, you start building, you see the same thing. The first time you deal with it, it's a problem. The second time you figured out a solution. And we figured if you get these people really highly trained and they keep doing the same thing, they're going to become an asset to the development community. And later on, once we have figured this out, because this is new, and no one has figured it out yet, but once we figured it out and we came up with a good way of implementing it, I think that's the time to say, okay, we're good to go right now.
Have you looked at permits that you currently have that are over $200,000 to see what the possible workload could be?
Actually, we look at our PCIS system, we pick out all the permits that would require, to under this green code. Yes, and then we look at some of these different categories and determine the workload, and that's why we come up with the number of staff.
When you come to the budget, tell us what those numbers are, because again, if you're talking about projects over 200,000, which are most of them, there are very few projects that don't hit that threshold. It again appears that you're creating a workload that will overwhelm a small unit of people. And as you say, the worst thing in the world is that the business community here saying rah rah, and then in a month later say we can't quite
Right.
fulfill it.
And
so we need to know those types of things, because from the way I view it, is that at some point in time, you're gonna have the new workload going to this smaller group of experts, and the larger group of non-experts in the green field are gonna have maybe less and less work.
Yes, sir. We will provide a little bit more detailed analysis on that. How about that to demonstrate the need
You're
of?
going to take that to budget and finance, but in 6 months, you're going to come back to this committee
Yes,
with an
sir.
update of where you are, that enterprise fund, where that enterprise fund is, and if these numbers materialize or not.
Yes, sir.
And if they don't materialize, then there'll probably be some modification.
Yes, sir.
So there's a recommendation by Mr. Parks, seconded by
Second.
Mr. Grant. Okay, so that's approved for the 19th position.
Thank you, sir.
You gotta, also when you go to budget finance, you gotta be assured that your enterprise fund is not gonna get overwhelmed, because then it drifts into the general fund. So,
Yes, sir.
all right.
Thank you, sir.
Okay,
Thank you.
3:30, that concludes our meeting.